Hi, it's Mayor Sendzik. Welcome back to Our Home with Mayor Sendzik. It is May. It has been a wet spring so far. Hopefully for the long weekend, it's sunny and everyone's having a good time, enjoying yourself in our community. The flowers have come out. The garden is back in Garden City. When you travel through the city, you see that the flowers have come out from their winter hibernation, and you're seeing the parks come back to life. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to get out into the trails that we have or explore the different parts of the city. I gotta say our downtown has come alive again as we've got the outdoor patios. And speaking of downtowns, we have at the center of it one of the largest library systems in Niagara, which is the St. Catharines Library. And it's been downtown for a number of years, and it is part of a library system in St. Catharines. And today I'm going to be joined by Ken Hsu. Ken Hsu is here. He is the CEO of the St. Catharines Library. And the reason why we're bringing Ken on is because you're new to the position. And you come from St. Catharines, you come from Welland. You were previously the CEO of the Welland Library. And then prior to that, Ken was in Iqaluit. He was part of the Iqaluit Library, head librarian at the Iqaluit Library as part of the Nunavut government there. So Ken, you bring a lot of experience to this new position here in St. Catharines. What drew you to put your name in the running for the new position here at the City of St. Catharines?
Thanks for having me here. So, I graduated from Western, and after that, I went to Nunavut. So initially, I worked as a systems librarian with Nunavut Public Library Services, and then later on, I got the head librarian job with Iqaluit Centennial Library. Then a few years later, I came back here because my family, they live in Niagara, and actually my wife, she worked in Niagara Falls, not far from this studio. And so I came back and joined my family, and I got a job with Welland Public Library. Started off as information coordinator, then moved up to manager of public services, then became the CEO. Then, my predecessor in St. Catharines retired last year when they put the job ad out, and I know they were looking for somebody, innovative and creative, and they would like to find somebody who can lead the library forward. And so I kind of put my name in because I think I'm the perfect candidate for this position. So I went through 2 rounds of interviews, and luckily the board selected me and now give me this job, and I'm very honored to be able to put myself in this position and lead this organization into 21st century.
And when you look at libraries, in your experience, you've worked in the far north, you've worked in Niagara, you've seen where libraries are headed. So my experience with libraries is as an outsider looking in at different places. So when I go to Halifax, I've toured their libraries. When I've gone to Kitchener, Waterloo, or Cambridge, I've looked at their libraries. When I went to Edmonton as part of a summit, I went to the library just to check it out. Yeah. Where do you see the future of libraries? Because a lot of people, I think, associate libraries with a place to go to get books. And yet, what I'm seeing and where we see communities focused is that the space of libraries is changing. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, I know, still a lot of people view library as just books. And we actually, when I was in Welland, we had a tagline saying, we are more than just books. And because to me, it's like now we are in 21st century, and a lot of things have changed. With public libraries especially, actually I was talking to some friends the other day. They said, I used to just come to library to borrow books, but now it seems like you guys offer a lot more than that. And for example, like now we have 3D printing, we have electronic resources, and we just recently acquired an online database called lynda.com. So you can get a card, and you can sort of if somebody's thinking of second career, or if they want to teach themselves how to do Excel spreadsheet or accounting, they can take the course. But on top of that is, we actually recently had a training with new library board members because you need new board members to guide the library moving forward. So one topic came up was, never talked about before, but now this year on April 27th, when we had the training, we focused a lot on social service hub. So as a public library in downtown St. Catharines, I can say when I was with Whelan Library, I didn't see many, say, homelessness or drug overdose or, and mental health issues. But now in St. Catharines, we see a lot. And so that's why on the 27th, we had a training and we brought people from the region, from John Howard Society, from Positive Living Niagara, and sort of like educated the board members, like what now library becomes a public space. Welcome everybody here. You try to be compassionate and try to help everybody in the community. Everybody is welcome here.
Right.
So yeah, so this is sort of like the trend now.
And that's one of the fundamental tenets of the creation of libraries in its history, is as a place where people can come to freely learn and also exchange ideas. When you look at the actual origins of libraries themselves, they were very much to allow those who couldn't afford much an opportunity to learn.
Yes.
And what we're seeing in communities across Canada is that you have libraries that are opening their doors to new learnings and to everybody who needs an opportunity. And so we have a number of different branches. We're in Port Dalhousie, Meriton, the Dr. Huck branch, which is at the Aquatic Center in the downtown. In terms of some of the additional services that you offer there, maybe expand on that a bit.
Well, I mean, like, because we have 4 kind of branch staffed with library employees, and actually we have one additional one with Seymour Hanna. It's sort of like books to go. There's no staff. You can go anytime when the arena's open, and
it's like
you can.
Vending machine.
Yeah. And
put your card in there, and
yes,
it pops out a book.
Yes. So every branch kind of serves a different demographic groups. And so one example I can give to you is at Huck, we recently launched Express Collection, because they have a lot of people from different areas in the city. They go use the pool, and then they stop by at the library. They want to borrow something. So by doing the Express Collection, is basically we don't allow people to place any holds on, say, DVDs or books. So they will just come to the library. You can encourage them to browse, and they see anything interesting, they just pick up the item, and then they check it out. So I think it's important to kind of gauge, which community you are serving, and then find their needs, and then cater towards their kind of like their expectations.
Right. So you're working on a strategic plan right now, which is important, because I think most organizations need to have strong strategic plans. So what do you envision the library 10 years from now? You've got a great breadth of experience. Tell me or describe what the library system will look like in the next 10 years.
Well, I mean, like the library board recently just approved the strategic plan process, and staff been working on that. Hopefully, we are going to release the RFP very soon. So I'm hoping is we are going to engage some kind of community dialogue and have consultation meetings and do some surveys, and then have meetings with board staff, city councilors, city employees, and community partners and stakeholders or residents. So gets the idea from them to see what they want to see the library moving forward. And since I started in January, I have heard many things from different partners or organizations in the community. I know the mayor you want to create a compassionate city here in St. Catharines, and some other organizations, for instance, like school boards, they would like to see more partnership with the library. When I was in Welland, we started doing educational kits with schools. So those kits are developed based on the provincial curriculum, and the teachers, they can simply come to the library, get an institution card, and check out one bin of those materials for their classroom. And also, for instance, like we try to work with social agencies and to provide services like Positive Living. They have been to the library to deliver educational courses on, opioids crisis and things like that. And we are working with Rent Smart Ontario and try to educate landlords and tenants, how to be responsible. So those are the things I think library is going to get more involved in, to be a hub to anybody in the community, and anybody can come here to enjoy whatever service they need. Right. Because library doesn't have any stereotype or stigma. So anybody can use a library. It's not like you go to some places and the people may have a negative view or different thoughts on you, thinking, oh, is this person doing all that? But you know, people come to the library, they can use books, they can use the internet, they can simply just sit there, read a paper.
Right. So in terms of the future of libraries, and one of the spaces that I find interesting is also the innovation space. And what I've looked at when you look at some of the libraries is creating space so that those who want to create things, like you talked about 3D printer, but it's more than that. And so why is that important, having that kind of space within a library?
Well, I think libraries, as you said, Mr. Mayor, I think it's more than just like 3D printing or, you know, like a maker space. That's what library people call it. But also I view library as sort of like a collaboration. So you people come here to collaborate. And, you know, St. Catharines Library is not far from Brock University. So they have students, they can simply come here. We have been talking to their music department and to see, you know, if they can come here to have a rehearsal or they can come here to simply just practice. And, you know, because to them it's like they need that space because, you know, to be honest, I lived in China and there are a lot of people there and the people often kind of on top of each other. And that's actually one thing I learned from a recent homelessness training at the library is, you know, people, when they are on top of each other, and sometimes it's hard for them to be creative, to be innovative, and to have time to think.
Right.
So I think we need to create that space. And the library, one thing is we are thinking of doing a spatial plan at the library, maybe to create more kind of like a study room or work group room, so people can come here, even small business owners, they can come here and you know, have their meetings and meet with their clients. Yeah. So those are the things I think the library should do moving forward.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to the strategic plan, and I know you got a vibrant new board that's part of the guidance of the library system here in St. Catharines, so I'm looking forward to that. And I've got my library card. How do you go about getting your library card? Just because I want folks to look into it, because I think there's a lot of value in becoming a member of the library.
Yes, you can just simply come to any library branch, and you know, people will get you, staff will get you a card.
All right. Well, I know you've got a great team, Ken, and the library system here in St. Catharines, the team that works the libraries, they are some of the most customer-friendly, very informative people that are working here in the city of St. Catharines. So if you get a chance, visit one of the libraries, check it out, and you'll find that the libraries are more than just books here in St. Catharines. So thank you for joining the show. Looking forward to learning more about your vision for the library system here in St. Catharines. And right after the break, we have Shaun Padulo from Heddle Marine that is now at the Port Weller Dry Docks, and you don't want to miss that as well. So come right on back.
Thank you.
Hi, and welcome back to Our Home with Mayor Sendzik. We were just talking with Ken Su from the St. Catharines Library and learning all about what's happening in the library system here in our community. And from that, we're going over to marine industry. And joining me is Shaun Padulo, the president of Heddle Marine Shipyards. Shaun has been in the marine industry for the better part of the last 10 years. He lived in the Netherlands, and he was a logistic management of a large module as well as transportation installation of offshore production structures. And while at Boskalis, look at that, I could say it right.
There you go, you got it.
Shaun lived and worked in Houston and focused on offshore installation projects, offshore decommissioning projects, and subsea IRM projects, which I don't know anything about. But they are all involving working in water. And he is an alumnus of Erasmus University in Rotterdam, the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, as well as McMaster University in Hamilton. Shaun holds a Master's of Science in Marine Economics and Logistics. So welcome to the show, Shaun.
Thanks for having
That is an impressive resume that I just read off, and it all deals with water. So where did your fascination with marine come from?
I think it started at a pretty early age, actually. I started sailing as a deckhand on tugboats for a local operator here on the Great Lakes, McKeel Marine. So it was during summers in high school and then through university. So, you know, really enjoyed being out on the water, working with the guys out there, and it was great. So I had a good time there.
So when you were in the Netherlands, you were you were in logistics, but were you in the shipping industry?
I was, yeah. My time in the Netherlands was incredible, actually. I went to school there and then sort of did what everybody does after university, throw a million resumes out.
Yeah.
And someone bit, and luckily it was a very interesting company. So they the company owned ships that could basically sink under the water and pick other ships up.
Wow.
And so kind of topical for what I'm doing now, because that's what we do at the dry dock. And so Dockwise, which was then bought by Boskalis, transported some of the largest ships ever produced, and also sort of offshore production structures, offshore drill rigs, that kind of thing.
And so in your role there, you were learning about what were you learning about?
So I'd say, as anyone just starting out, my first few months was probably, I got really good at getting people coffee. And then I slowly developed into helping on projects, so sort of the back-end administrative side, and then really moved into commercial. I got really lucky because my boss at the time, she had sort of started a new division within the company called logistical management.
Okay.
And so she, as well as others within the company, had come up with a plan to transport modules that would be turned into factories. So I think traditionally when you see a factory being built, it's stick-built, and they're building it from the ground up on a location. What we were doing at Dockwise was they were building block sections, like Lego blocks, of factories in Korea, China, and we were actually transporting those Lego blocks to locations in Australia, Europe, you name it, and they were assembling factories that way.
Wow.
So it was a new division, and then I actually ended up in the offshore side as well, where we were installing offshore platforms. And my boss there was a fellow Canadian from Montreal, naval architect from Memorial University in Newfoundland, and we focused on Canada. So I got to do a lot of work in St. John's and sort of come back home. Although it's still 2,000 kilometers away from here, it was great to spend time on the East Coast and on the Rocks. So enjoy
Right,
it.
because you grew up in Niagara Falls partially.
Yeah, so my mom is an alumni of high school here in Niagara Falls.
Yeah,
and
we don't hold that against you. Jim did, I'd be proud, but I'm just saying, but you also went to Ridley.
I did, yeah.
So you're a Ridley grad.
I went to high school at Ridley, spent a lot of time in St. Catharines, and I just got to commend everybody, yourself included, in St. Catharines for what you guys have done to downtown. It's changed a lot. When I left probably in 2011 and came back in 2016, 17, I couldn't believe the difference.
Yeah, it's changed a lot. Now,
Yeah.
you're playing a role in that because you're president of Heddle Marine, and Heddle Marine has a number of different docks, dry docks, and one of them that you added to the family is the Port Weller Dry Docks. And a lot of folks who are familiar with St. Catharines, the Port Weller Dry Docks was a institution for building the lakers that plied the lakes here across the Great Lakes in Ontario. And it's really it has always been an important structure and facility. And Heddle Marine is now the new owners of it.
Correct.
So why was that important for you to get the lease for the dry docks?
I think that there was two main reasons. So one of our owners and founders and operators actually is a gentleman by the name of Rick Heddle.
Yeah.
So he started the business, out of basically the back of a truck on a quayside in Hamilton and sort of built it up, built 3 floating dry docks in Hamilton, and got to a point, I think, where they had sort of maxed out their capacity in Hamilton. And one of the interesting things about Rick and sort of the business is that if you look at the major shipyards in Canada, over the course of the last 30, 50, 100 years, they've all gone bust multiple times. Yeah. Where Heddle's been around for 30 years and it hasn't, and it's done quite well. So I think they'd reached a pinnacle of what they could do in Hamilton, and they started looking externally. And Rick is a partner, Blair McKeel, who also was involved in the marine industry, and I think, very entrepreneurial, growth-driven, as is Rick, and they decided, okay, let's start expanding Heddle out. At the same time, Port Weller always focused on the construction or repair of very large vessels, right. Whereas Heddle had smaller dry docks, so the focus was a bit smaller. This allowed us to kind of elevate our game and start looking at clients like Algoma, right. or looking at clients like Lower Lakes and their larger vessels. So, twofold. One, we hit our max capacity in Hamilton. 2, we wanted to grow, and in order to take on larger vessels, we needed a facility that was capable of handling those vessels.
Right, one is very grateful for the fact that Heddle Marine, and you're right, Rick is an entrepreneur, a true business person who really knows how to build the business in a way that ensures sustainability and longevity. Yes. And so this past year, you were in there with one of the Algoma ships. It was the Tim Duel.
It was actually the John D. Leach.
The John D. Leach, yes. That's what it was. And what were you doing to that ship?
So the John D. Leach was a significant project for us. So it was a full blast and coat on the external part of the ship, so you'll see a nice new paint job on it. And then we did a lot of steel work on the internals. So there was, a significant amount of steel that we were doing throughout the course of the winter, and sort of small odds and sods throughout the rest of the ship, and a little bit of mechanical tail end. But in general, for us, it was a pretty significant project. And I think Algoma going forward is going to be one of our most important clients, right? They're in St. Catharines. They're about 10 to 15 minutes away from the shipyard, depending on traffic.
Yeah.
And I think they've been incredibly supportive so far to sort of bring repair capacity back home, so that they also sort of have a facility where they can dock their ships.
Well, I think that's important because the marine industry is an important part of our economy. When you look at Algoma is one of the biggest employers in our community, and a lot of their employees work on the different ships that are crisscrossing the Great Lakes. But they also have their head office in downtown St. Catharines. They have a complete corporate structure that is it provides a lot of employment for professional people in our community, for people who are working on the ships, as well as there's a sector of people who supply the ships, and that missing piece was the dry dock where they can have their ship over there. And so, what's the vision for Heddle Marine moving forward? You're year 1 or 1.5, 2 into that facility. What's the vision for Heddle Marine moving forward?
So, first step is we've just recently rebranded, so it's now Heddle Shipyards, which is going to encompass all the different divisions that we have. But you're right, it was Heddle Marine Servicing for the last 30 years, and we actually, in all of our facilities, so even though we have a new logo, we continue to display the old logo and sort of talk about honoring our past, because again, 30 years of really excellent history. But in terms of Port Weller, I would say that the growth potential we have there versus all of our other locations is tremendous, right? We've also taken over the Thunder Bay Shipyard.
Yeah.
It's a bit further north, and depending on what we decide to do there'll be growth as well in Thunder Bay. But the focus right now for us in the next 2 years is to really bring the Port Weller dry docks back to sort of a center of excellence in Ontario. Because again, I mean, if you look at Algoma, if you look at some of the other operators here, Ontario at one time was sort of the center of Great Lake shipping industry. So with Port Weller this winter, I believe we had 70 full-time employees that were directly employed by Heddle, and there was a multitude of service providers that we had brought in to assist us. I think the strategy that I'm seeing going forward, and this is done a lot with the shipyards that I worked in Korea and in Europe, is we want to build up certainly our own full-time group of employees. You need that because you're going to need to have that knowledge and that excellence there. But also we want to build up a supply chain. So what's really interesting with these Korean yards when they're building sort of these mega LNG tankers or offshore production structures, they actually employ like entire cities around the shipyards, and it's just almost like a supply chain that all congregates into the shipyard, and the shipyard's really a project manager and managing that project. So I think from our perspective, we would really like to surpass the 100-person full-time employment mark, Heddle Shipyards employees in Port Weller, and then look at developing key subcontractors in the region. And that's going to be really important for us.
Yeah. That's what I find so exciting about Heddle Shipyards is the growth potential. Because what we've learned is that you have someone like the Algoma that has had to, some of its ship repair had to be sent to the States because we didn't have the capacity here. You have the Coast Guard, you have a lot of different marine focused businesses with ships that weren't being able to be serviced on the Great Lakes in Canadian waters. And the fact that we now have the opportunity here because of the vision of Heddle Shipyards, that really speaks volumes to your business and what you and Rick have brought to our community, and also the growth potential. And when we talk about the marine sector, I just want to end on, how do you see, because a lot of industry, when we look at industry, it's the ups and downs. How do you see the growth of the industry on the Great Lakes? So you've been around water for the greater part of your adult life. Where do you see the growth take place?
Well, it's interesting because right now we're sort of waiting to see what develops. I think the industry 20 years ago, there was a lot more ships, and they were a lot smaller. And so what's happened is newer vessels being built overseas in China or Croatia or other yards, they're a lot larger. Their carrying capacity is greater, so they can transport the same volumes of cargo, fewer amounts of ships. So for ship repair companies like us, we're sort of waiting to see what happens, because on the one hand, we're getting a bit nervous in the sense that there's fewer potential clients, but on the other, the new legislation that's coming in and sort of new developments within the industry may actually be more beneficial for us,
Right.
in a sense that we're looking at a ton of ballast water treatment system installations,
Right.
so technology that's basically going to help keep invasive species out of our waterways, scrubber systems that are being installed on ships, so stopping emission pollution or reducing the amount of emission pollution. Marine transportation is still, I think, the most environmentally friendly way to transport cargo.
Right.
And so it's a testament to all the operators like Algoma and Rand and McKeel and all of these service providers on the Great Lakes that they're moving cargo along the waterways more efficiently than, I'd say, traditional methods, which is great. And so I think that we're seeing a lot of potential there.
That's awesome. So I want to thank you for coming on. I want to welcome you to the community, Shaun. You and your team are going to do some wonderful things at the Port Weller Dry Docks. And so if you want to learn more about Heddle Shipyards, just go online. You can search them up. You'll know where they are. You'll have it. And I've got this hard hat here.
We want to see you in the yard more often, Mayor Sendzik.
I'll be wearing this to the yard. So I want to thank you for joining us on the show today. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the May for everyone tuning in today. Thank you very much. Take care.